Denim Couch Podcast. Ooh, whoa, ooh, whoa.
The 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s with Steph with an F.
Hi guys, welcome to the Denim Couch Podcast, where we chill on this denim couch and talk about the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. I'm Stephanie Tanner. Welcome. Hey guys, it's Stephanie Tanner with the Denim Couch Podcast, and this week's episode is with Christy Sanders. And for those of you who don't know, this is actually my mother, and one of the reasons I started this podcast is because I fantasized of what it would be like to live back in the 80s when she grew up, and I've always wondered what it was like to grow up back then, and I always loved looking at my mother's photos and just wondering what that was like for her. I thought it was so exciting and magical, and that's probably just because she's my mom. But I wanted to share this with you all, but also I'm glad I have it for personal record for my family and myself, and sure do love my mom. So to start off with, there are crickets outside my window, and I love these crickets. Whenever I'm alone or laying in bed, I love listening to them. It's the one thing right now that I feel like gives me complete peace. I just focus in on the crickets and listen, and it's like I got little friends outside my window. The other thing that I've been thinking about this week has been on my mind a lot, and that's that life is short, and we don't know when we're going to pass or when people we love are going to pass. And we don't know how much time we have with each individual person that we care about. And that's rough, but also it makes me want to just focus and spend quality time with the people around me, especially my son. It's been kind of fun this weekend. I decided we were going to have an alone weekend, just us two. I wanted to spend a lot of time with just Zeke, even though I do spend time with him every single day. I wanted to make sure my focus was only on him. You know, I've been thinking about how there's only so much time we have with the people around us. We don't know how long we'll get to be with each other in this life. And I've been following an account. Her name is Ashley Stock, and she goes under Little Miss Mama on Instagram, and her little girl just passed away, and it's such a heartbreaking story, but I'm glad I got to follow it to remind myself how awesome this earthly experience is, and how regardless of the amount of time we have with people, we get to make some pretty awesome memories, and how those people have such an impact on our lives, and we just create awesome memories with these people. And we love deeply, and we appreciate different personalities. That's what I've been thinking about this week. So it's a little deep, but it's been good. And I'm really excited to share this interview with you. It's very close to my heart. I really love the stories that she has and the sweet little details that end up in her stories. I just feel like it's almost relaxing to listen to the sweet little details of Christy's experience in the 80s. And with that, let's just dive in. How common was your name in the 80s?
My name was very common. I was named after a book. It was Christy, the book. It was about a teacher in the Appalachians, and because of that, my name was very common. There were lots of different spellings of my name, so my name was never spelled correctly. Actually, my real name is Christina, but nobody ever called me Christina but my second grade teacher, because there were so many Christys that they ran out of, like Christy L, Christy. So that year I was Christina.
What was life like in the 80s?
So I was a teenager in the 80s. Mostly I was a child in the 70s. In the 70s, things were really safe, and mothers and fathers didn't really Like, you mostly went out to play, and you played like the whole day because there wasn't really television. Like, we had a television, but it only had 3 channels, and we weren't really allowed to watch a lot of it, except for when we were sick or something. Or in the evening, my dad watched shows that we watched with him. But mostly we'd go outside and play. So I had friends in my neighborhood, and your mom would make you breakfast, and then you would, in the summer, you'd go find a friend, and, you just played all day long outside. I lived right next to it. We called it the dead end lot. So it was a big grassy field, and all the neighborhood kids, we would go over there and we would play. So we would collect all the dandelions in a big wagon, and we'd make bread with mud. So we had like a house in the back of the lot, and we'd sweep it with a broom. And there was like we'd play mom and dad, and we would get jars and collect fireflies and bees, insects with jars. One time my friends were going bee hunting, and I didn't know you had to bring a jar, so I caught it with my hand. We played in the lot. We had forts. We played a lot of games at night. Like, we'd play hide and seek and tag, and all the neighborhood kids would play kick the can at night. But I had to go to bed, so I would lay in my room and listen to them playing. I remember there was a kid on my block. His name was Alex, and he probably ended up being like very theatrical later. But he would organize like shows that we would do for the neighborhood. And I had a friend on my block named Amy Seabrook. She and I were close friends. And then there was a friend I had named Chris, who was also named Christy Dale. You knew all the neighborhood kids. We knew our neighbors really well. There were neighbors we were scared of. Like, you knew not to go by Gertie's house with your big wheels. Or we rode bikes a lot. We didn't have helmets. So we would ride. I remember riding bikes barefoot. I got my foot caught in a chain, but we would ride bikes barefoot. We did a lot of things that kids would be considered dangerous now. In the summer, we would play outside all day and drink out of the hose and, run around barefoot. My mom would bring us popsicles, and we'd go inside for lunch, but pretty much we just played. We did a lot of make-believe playing. My dad built us a playhouse outside. I had a playhouse in my backyard, so we would play house and drive through, and we played Star Wars, because Star Wars came out in 1977, so we played Star Wars. We played Scooby-Doo. My brothers liked to play a lot of things, so I would play with them.
What did you do for fun in the 80s?
When I went to school, I rode the bus. It was different in the 70s and 80s because our parents didn't hover over us a lot like I think parents do now. Like we're involved now as parents in a really intense level. But in the 70s and 80s, like, parents had parent things to do. So you rode the bus to school. Like, nobody drove me to school. And I lived in Portland. So I would walk to the bus stop and take the bus to school. Sometimes I would walk all the way home from school when I was in high school. And I took all the back roads. It was several miles away, but I would walk through all the neighborhoods. When we were in school, we spent all our day in school and then came home and just entertained ourselves. Sometimes we'd watch TV in the afternoons. Yeah, so my family didn't have technology. So, like, I remember we didn't get a VCR till I was in college. So we would have to rent. If we wanted to watch videos, we'd have to rent a machine and the videos. And before they were tapes, they were like big, huge discs. So it was kind of a big deal if you rented movies. Sometimes my parents would take us to the movies, but my parents were really frugal, so they would never buy us popcorn there. So my mom would pop popcorn, and she'd put it in paper bags and make us smuggle it into the theater in a diaper bag, which was very embarrassing. Sometimes we'd go to drive-ins. But yeah, mostly for entertainment, we didn't have TV or things like, we did have, I guess that's not true. We had television in the evenings because we had shows we'd watch as a family. We watched like The Muppet Show. We watched Donnie and Marie, which was a variety show. We watched The Carol Burnett Show. We also watched kind of naughty shows like Benny Hill, which was really racy, but I didn't know it at the time. I just thought it was funny. We watched MASH with my dad in the evenings. My dad liked to watch MASH. We would watch the news a lot of times. There was only one guy that really did the news. His name was Walter Cronkite. We would watch him.
What were some popular activities?
So in the 80s, like when I was a teenager, we liked to listen to music because MTV had just come out. So my friends all had MTV, but we liked to listen to like tape cassettes and our Walkman, like big boom boxes. We had record players. I used to listen to a lot of records on my record player. I remember when I got the Michael Jackson album, Thriller, that was my first album. I would listen to that on the record player. And I did aerobics to like Jane Fonda on a record player. And if I was like jumping, it would skip, the record would skip. We had a phone that had a cord. So if you were talking to your teenage friends, you kind of had to stay in one place. So it was kind of a big deal when we got a cordless phone. And when I was a teenager, we would do things like we would get in the car and drive up and down, a street where we'd know there'd be kids. We did Chinese fire drills where a bunch of girls would get in a car and we would stop and then we'd all run around the car and get back in. We'd toilet paper houses. That was kind of harmless fun. We did that a lot with the church girls. And then sometimes in high school, we'd go to parties where there'd be a lot of alcohol and we would go egg people's houses, which is really bad. But usually I would drive because I didn't drink and my friends all did. So I would drive the getaway car. And I remember one time I was driving my parents, of course, did not know I was doing this. I would just tell them I was spending the night at a friend's house. And one night I was driving a Volkswagen. My friend had a Volkswagen Bug and it's a stick shift. And I knew how to drive a stick shift, but we went somewhere and we were egging things and some car started chasing us and I was driving the getaway car and it was really scary because I would pop the clutch and I thought we were going to get hurt. Sometimes we would go drive down in downtown Portland and there were a lot of one-way streets and I wasn't a very good driver, so that was kind of scary too. I did sneak out when I was a teenager because my parents were pretty strict and they didn't really have a clue what was going on. So in my garage, my parents had this house. I couldn't have snuck out the front door because it was very loud, but I would wait till they would be asleep and I'd go out into the garage and there was this side door on the garage and it was always bolted like with a big like piece of wood because my dad had our house locked up like Fort Knox. So I would sneak out the side door and go out by the fence and then I would usually have somebody pick me up like a block away. That's how I would sneak out. Yeah, and kids in the 80s, they did a lot of drinking, they liked to go to clubs and dance, and people had fake IDs. I never had a fake ID, but we did a lot of slumber parties. People went to concerts. That was pretty popular. I went to some concerts. I went to Def Leppard, which they're pretty old now, but that was pretty rebellious. And in my high school, there were a lot of kids that smoked still because smoking was in the 70s and 80s. All of my friends' parents smoked. At my high school, there was what we called the pit. The kids that smoked would go out and smoke in the pit. It was the rock music was very rebellious in those days. So nowadays, I think they play it on all the easy listening stations. But in those days, hard rock music was very rebellious. And so on Fridays, we would play it in the cafeteria. And we thought we were really rebellious. And you didn't have cell phones, so you talked to people. You wrote people notes like that you wanted to date or spend time with. You would write notes. That was how you communicated. We did a lot of dating, though. I don't know that kids date anymore. We'd go on dates. We'd do dances.
What was the fashion like back in the 80s?
In the 80s, we had really big hair. Everybody had a permanent, and then you would blow dry your permanent and then curl it. So it was very big, and then you would hairspray it. So it took a long time to do your hair, and I had really long hair. So generally, I would do my hair in seminary because it required a lot of time. I actually I don't know if you've heard of New Wave, but I liked a lot of the styles that were New Wave, which was kind of a funky, newer way of dressing in the middle to late 80s. And I liked a lot of their styles. It was kind of edgy. It was different. Some of the girls had really short hair, or I remember my freshman year, I really liked there was kind of I cut my hair short and I permed it, and I had these overalls, and I don't know, it was kind of penny loafers. It was kind of I don't know how to describe it, but it was New Wave was the style. There was a lot of purple, a lot of eyeshadow, a lot of colors. The mascara was colored sometimes. I had a friend, Karen was her name, and she was really good at makeup. And she tried to teach me how to use like foundation and stuff because I didn't really know how to use makeup. So she bought me a bunch of like CoverGirl foundation, and I did it for a while. And then I was like, this is too much work. So I still kind of wear my makeup the same way that I wore it in high school. I had a lot of really awesome clothes. I thought my mother sewed, so she sewed me most of my dresses, which always embarrassed me a little bit, even though they were really cute. But, I thought that I wanted to go to the store and buy clothes. When I was in high school, I wore, you would buy a specific brand of jeans, there were different cool brands of jeans. I liked to wear mini skirts. I wore jean mini skirts. My mother didn't like that. So I would wait till I was out of the house and pull them up really short. But when I got dressed in the morning, I'd pull them way down.
What made you happy back then?
Oh, I just being with my friends, doing fun things, mostly being with my friends. We spend a lot of time, we'd giggle and talk about boys and hang out, listen to music, that kind of stuff.
What brings you happiness now?
My kids and my grandkids. I think what brings me happiness now is when people I love are happy. That's what brings me the most happiness. Like if I know that my children are happy, if I know that they feel fulfilled, they're using their talents, that's what really brings me the most happiness. I'm kind of one of those people that I'm happy when other people are happy. Like it bothers me if I heard a quote somewhere I think it was from a movie, that you're only as happy as your saddest child. So I think as I've gotten older, I'm really happy if I know my kids are happy. If I know that they're doing things they love, like it makes me happy. I also like to do my hobbies, I like to play the harp, I like to play the piano, I like to read.
Were you ever scared, unhappy, or anxious?
I didn't like it when people argued or there was strife and conflict. That probably brought me the most sadness. I worried a lot. I would worry about people. I did feel scared a lot as a child because I lived in Portland, and I think I was born early. I guess I didn't mention that earlier, but I was born early, and I was sick a lot when I was really little. Premature kids often get sick, and it was the 70s, so I was sick a lot. And plus in the 70s, you got childhood diseases probably that kids are immunized for now. Like I got chicken pox, got roseola, scarlet fever, those kinds of things that kids probably don't get as much now. And I often had sore throats, and because I was born so early, and my parents were very protective, so I was often indoors when I was young, being given penicillin. They gave me a lot of penicillin. And then I think I was always really little and short until I was a teenager. And I was still short, but I was really small as a child. So I was very shy, and I was scared a lot. So my parents would tell me stories, like boogeyman stories, to like make sure I didn't, get in cars with people. And Portland was, a big city. So I was pretty scared all the time, I think.
How would you compare your childhood or teenage years to today's kids?
Yeah, we didn't have technology, so we played. We just did a lot of playing. We were always outside. I think even in school, there was so much activity outside. I just remember being outside a lot for recess, and I did a lot of imagining. I did a lot of roller skating when I was little. I didn't talk about that, but I liked to roller skate. I like to ride my bike. We did a lot of active outdoor things. My dad climbed mountains. He was a Mazama. So when I was little, there were only two of us, my brother and I, and we would go camping a lot. We would stay in a tent, my mom and my dad and my brother and I remember I slept all night on a gun. And I thought it was loaded, but apparently it wasn't. I asked my dad that a couple years ago, and he said, oh no, that gun wasn't loaded. But I laid on it the whole night thinking that I was going to roll over and die. But yeah, we just did a lot of active things, as kids. And I laid out in the sun a lot. Probably have skin cancer because we liked to tan. So I remember I'd lay out in the front yard all the time. We weren't on the computer or the cell phone or the technology. We were outside playing. And I think like nowadays, I don't think kids know their neighbors. Like we knew everybody in the neighborhood. I probably use technology more than I should. I think it can be very mind numbing. You know, it can be used like a drug, like any bad habit, you know, to escape. It's kind of an escape thing. Like before, you know, when we just had television, before it became cable TV and everything, you could use it to, you know, escape. But there weren't as many options, you know. And I feel like the content was better. But yeah, I think technology is great, but I don't think it makes people happier. I think we were pretty happy with just the little joys that we had, you know, especially as teenagers. Like we could get a lot of joy just from listening to a new record, you know, that we bought, or a new tape that we bought. Or we used to go to the mall. The mall was a big thing in the 80s. You know, you get all dressed up and go shopping. People don't shop anymore because they get it all over the internet, you know. We would go to Clackamas Town Center in Portland, and it was a big, huge mall. And we'd walk through and, you know, look at all the latest clothes and get food together. And there was an ice skating rink. So it was kind of more about the experience. And I actually worked in a clothes shop in the mall when I was a teenager. And I would do displays for the windows, and we would tack things up. You know, tack outfits up and price things and run the old credit cards through the old credit card machine, which wasn't a computer. It was a carbon piece of paper that would make a copy of the card, and the person would have to sign it. Yeah, it was just a lot different of a world. And there was a lot of money in the 80s, actually. It was, I think that we had a lot of hope for our futures at that time. Like we all felt like we were going to be successful. You know what I mean? Like the world wasn't quite as, I mean, it was scary because we lived during the Cold War. So, you know, there was the Soviet Union or the USSR, who was the big superpower in the United States. And we were always afraid that like there'd be a big war between the two superpowers. But you didn't have like terrorism and per se, like, you know what I mean? Like it was a pretty identifiable enemy that you were afraid of. And we were afraid of nuclear war, but the world was a lot different. And we felt like if we went to college and we studied really hard and we worked really hard, that we'd have a good job. You know, that was kind of the world we lived in. And for the most part, that was true. You know, and that's not so much true anymore. You know, there's really no guarantee that you'll go to college. And so that's kind of sad, I think, for today's kids, because in the 80s we were, you know, Ronald Reagan was the president, and there wasn't as much national debt, and people were really hopeful, and, you know, there was kind of a different feeling.
Wasn't that awesome? All I can say is I love my mother. I'm glad I have this recorded, and the 80s are so fun. I love the 80s. I am so stoked about the 80s. I hope you guys have a great week. Looking forward to our next 80s episode. I will talk to you then. Bye. Wait. You can't miss the embarrassing story of the week. No. Okay. It's that time. It's Steph with an F's embarrassing story of the week. All right, so this week I thought about the embarrassing things that I've done, and there's a few. I really don't want to share some of them with you, so I'm not going to. But I've been trying to scrapbook. Don't even get me started on this. I've been trying to finish a few things here and there, and I looked once again through my old photos, and I got a laugh about a few weeks ago. My family noticed that I had at least 15 photos where I went through this period of posing with a wand or Harry Potter glasses or both, or some sort of Harry Potter memorabilia in every single photo. No one else is posing with a prop. no one else is dressed up. I must have just, anywhere we had been, I must have had my wand or my glasses or a book or something Harry Potter with me at this time in my life. And so we found about 15 different photos of this Harry Potter obsession. It is quite hilarious. And then today went back and I found even more. I found even more in a different box. So there's got to be 20 plus photos out there of a span of about a year where I just posed with a Harry Potter prop in any picture that was taken. So thought that was pretty embarrassing. And a great memory. Anyways, hope you guys all have a wonderful week. Talk to you next week. Bye.
If you came here for mental health help, please go visit your doctor. If you're looking for some mental health tips, Dr. Daniel Amen is someone I follow. I love what he has to say and offer. I think his website is brainhealthassessment.com, and he just has some awesome checklist items that go over brain health or habits that you should be doing to have better brain health. I want to say there's like 5 to 10 items, and if you have those, if you're working on those habits and trying to improve them to improve your brain health, you'll also improve your happiness level, because brain health equals mental health. So keep your brains happy and healthy, and check out Dr. Daniel Amen. This is not sponsored. I just really like what he has to say, and I think it's really beneficial. I think it can help a lot of people. It's actually very matter of fact, kind of obvious, but yeah, we neglect so many of these habits daily, and I do feel like, if you're feeling unhappy, that may be one of the reasons you're unhappy, because you're neglecting your brain health, which is also your mental health, and yeah, trying to improve these habits could really help. So check him out. If you have any stories from the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s, please get in contact with me. Let's chat. I want nothing more than to chat about the past. I want nothing more than to chat about the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. If you have any specific questions that I'm not asking that you would like to know about these eras while interviewing these people, please let me know. I would love some advice, and I would love your input. So, what would you guys like to know?